Hey, Mike, I hear you have lukewarm tea.
Yeah, it's kind of gross, actually. I wish I had a few minutes to go upstairs and fix this, but I'm not going to do that.
Right before we started, he said, "Ugh, lukewarm tea."
Uh,
Just when I hit record or whatever live.
Live.
That's what happens. You know what? When you're in your own basement office, it's really your fault, Mike.
hmm
Hmm.
Well, at least it's cold down here, but it's colder elsewhere. So I still think we're doing better than the rest of
It
the
is
country.
colder elsewhere. I was just talking to John Delano, who works with us, and he's in Dallas, and he was talking about snow there. And then Brett, who's on our team, was talking. His kids are out of school for a couple days. Like they're getting like a foot of snow, right?
Yeah, well, this is what happens when you wind up the atmosphere with a bunch of extra energy by taking carbon that took hundreds of millions of years to put in the ground and putting it all into the atmosphere in 200 years. The planet has never seen anything like that happen before, and we don't really know where this is all going. But if we keep trying, we are definitely going to make the planet uninhabitable by us. So I do hope the crows do a better job next.
Crows, Mike?
Mm,
You think it'll be crows,
well,
not tardigrades?
I don't know. I mean, tiny, unkillable, can live in space. You may be onto something there.
Oh, I thought you meant crows.
No, no.
Anyone with a slingshot knows crows are killable.
Should we
You
talk about
shouldn't. You
security?
shouldn't do it. Oh, yeah, all right. All right. Yeah, all right. Hey, a couple of things to mention about security. Our healthcare breach report is out. We do it twice a year. Interested. We take all the data from the HHS website, break it down. Very interesting results. Breaches exposed more than 45 million records in 2021, the most is since 2015. I think it might be the most ever.
Mm.
And incidents grew at a slower rate than previous years, which that's good, right? Anyway, if folks want a link to the report and you don't have it, email me, jake@criticalinsight.com, and I'll send it over to you.
Yeah. Well, maybe the health sector is getting played out.
Mm-hmm.
Once they've all been compromised, extorted, and then they take steps to avoid being a repeat victim, the criminals may be running out of easy targets in health. It's a theory, but it's consistent with the data. I also read the health sector is number one in terms of being a fraud victim to the tune of $5 billion in 2021. We're going to do a panel on the breach report soon. Yeah,
We are, yeah,
I
and
never know till the day of.
yeah, I
So
know. We just tell you to show up and talk, and you do that
yeah,
well. So that's good. Yeah, I mean, we're going to do something on that. We've been doing stuff on the people problem. We did a webinar about that.
mm,
People problem, not that people are a problem, but that, there's aren't enough people out there. Is it a skills problem? Is it not? We have all these things going on. You should, if you want to see anything in the past, you can go to our YouTube channel, which is how some of you are watching this. Or if you want a link to any of it, just email me, Jake@criticalinsight.com, Jake@criticalinsight.com, and I'll send it to you. Yeah, that's how I'll get it to you. I put sometimes links in the chat, but the chat is only on LinkedIn, and some people are watching on Facebook, your favorite platform. Some people are watching on YouTube. So anyway, just email me and I'll send you what you
interesting.
need.
Facebook is in the news this week. We'll get to that, but I want to make one more announcement before we get into the meat here. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, formerly known as the Infrastructure Bill, is now starting to shape up as to how states are going to adjudicate the distribution of cybersecurity grant funds to local governments, including the 7% that's been set aside of the 1 billion for rural local governments. And because of the aforementioned lack of qualified resource, the people problem, um, a lot of local governments don't know where to start in developing a justification for funds requests. So we are going to provide rapid assessments to do just that. So if you're a city or a county, and especially a rural one, you will be hearing from us.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, really what we want to do is help folks figure out how they can get, their chunk of change here, because everybody should get some.
Yeah.
And anyway, we'll have more on that later. Hey, Mike, we need to get to the news, and speaking of local governments, like they're still getting compromised at a pretty good clip, right?
Yeah. I read that just in January, there have been 10 local governments, and this also includes school districts, that have been hit with ransomware. And
Doesn't it make you angry? Like,
yeah,
it
it
still
does.
makes me angry every time.
Yeah, well, like hospitals, right?
Yeah,
Hitting schools during a pandemic when school attendance has been like bumpy and difficult, this is further affecting the education of our kids. The
totally.
the country is going to suffer for this, and I have to think that that fact right there, right? We are failing to educate this cohort of students is a strategic value to our global competitors, right? That makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about those competitors, obviously, Ukraine, right? We're moving a couple thousand troops to the border there in Eastern Europe.
Mhm.
It's in the news every day, and it's giving me the heebie-jeebies. Have we increased our cybering yet? To soften up Ukraine in preparation for a land invasion? I mean,
Yeah.
have we seen that from Russia? Like what's going on?
Not that I'm aware of, but interestingly, right now, Ann Neuberger, who is the Deputy National Security Advisor for Cyber, what a title, has been dispatched to NATO, I'm pointing at NATO, to meet with Baltic country
Is
officials on
NATO
cyber
is NATO
threats.
that way, or is NATO
It's
that way?
it's I don't know. It's east. So, so we haven't seen the thing happen yet, right?
Mhm.
Ukraine power water, getting knocked down. But we have let Vlad know we're watching and actively working on snuffing out, his attempts to affect water, power, transportation, right? Other critical sectors in NATO countries. And also that would further destabilize Ukraine. So
Mhm.
sending Ms. Neuberger there is definitely meant to send a message, right? She's the highest official in the administration that's focused on cybersecurity. That plus a couple of thousand troops has got to be giving Mr. Putin some pause right
And
now.
unless we're just giving him what he wants, which is attention, but that's not the cyber topic now, is it?
No.
Um, in terms of our own critical infrastructure, there's also an executive directive from the president about the water sector. We talked about that internally last week. Seems to me the federal government is much more in the game here than ever before, which is great. You've talked about the fact that the private sector can't do it themselves, and we need the federal government, we need state governments, we need folks to step in here. Like, I mean, do you think it's working? Like our own water utilities, is there enough time to change behaviors and get controls in place? Like, and by the way, the thing that put it in my head was you were in Politico on this.
Yeah. On Friday. Yeah. And then, I think what I said was this might be too little too late.
Hmm.
Knowing as I do the rate at which controls like multi-factor authentication can be deployed really broadly, I think we're a bit far behind the curve right now in something as critical as a water sector. It's going to take funding and people to get it done. And I don't know if you've ever been in a utility operation, but they do not like change at all. Stuff works, don't touch it. Utilities have always been about availability, not security or integrity, right? So back to your point about the federal government being an active participant here, you know, threats of retaliation are going to have to fill the gap until we get adequate controls in place for, these really critical things.
Yeah, I mean, and
Will that work? I don't know.
I don't know, and I get their point of view. I mean, nobody wants the water to stop running and then to be the guy at the controls who caused that to happen. At the same
Right.
time, we've already seen a couple of breaches there.
Yeah.
So, hey, before we get into threats and vulnerabilities, one more thing I thought that was interesting this week. A couple of articles on surveillance.
Mhm.
You always complain about creepy tracking and how privacy laws are popping up to protect consumers. Something else popping up too: cyber mercenaries and surveillance as a service. You and
Mhm.
I, you and I emailed back and forth about this.
Yep. Oddly enough, the article you're talking about, the one about, mercenaries, cyber
Mhm.
mercenaries, was a study done by the creepiest tracker of all, Facebook, now Meta.
Well, they know what they're doing.
They do. So these companies and their products, right, the surveillance mercs, are marketed as having a focus on, criminals, terrorists, right, which sounds legit enough,
Mhm,
but it's
mhm.
been uncovered that the targeting is pretty indiscriminate, right? Everybody gets swept up in this, and then, for a fee, you can buy someone's movement, or even get access to like voice conversations and
Sure.
cameras on phones, stuff like that. And this type of business is on the rise, man. This does not make for a happy future if you think about how this might be used by corporate espionage, uh, activists that target politicians. It's not good. And maybe Congress is going to take this up because they've started to dip their finger into this privacy business. But along those lines, you remember the NSO group?
We talked about it last week. The Israeli
Mm.
company with the zero-click malware that can take over your phone and surveil you
Yep.
without you touching a link or anything.
Mhm.
Why? What now?
So they were apparently offering small phone companies bags of cash for access to what's called the SS7 network. So System Signaling 7, SS7, is provides interoperability between like old copper networks, right? Plain old telephone service, and IP-based transport. And it's known to be vulnerable because of a design flaw. So if you can get access to a small telco and they're going to give you that access, you can surveil any phone call in the world. Okay. So, uh, the NSO brand just took another hit. I don't know if, how many more hits they could take. Sounds like some bad people to me, and speaking of which, Peter Thiel, whatever his name is, secretly funded a cyber warfare startup that ended up hacking WhatsApp. Okay. So the founder of the company, right? He was one of the founders of Facebook that owns WhatsApp, hacks its own product. Speaking of bad people.
Well, that's not good. Thanks a lot for that. Didn't make me feel better about using WhatsApp. All right, Mike. Threats and
Don't do it.
vulnerabilities.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Okay. T's and V's. Huge increase, like almost 600% increase in bad people using Excel add-ins, right? .xll
Mhm.
files to infect systems compared to last quarter. Watch out for those. I would filter those on the way in and just not even deal with them. Source code for malware to compromise IoT devices has been posted to GitHub. Okay, so we can
Mhm.
expect a giant botnet being created because of that.
Mhm.
10,000 people downloaded an authenticator app from Google Play that's actually a banking Trojan. All right. So it's going to steal your money. Interesting strategy for defeating multi-factor authentication, to give you a booby-trapped authenticator app. Wow. It's kind of brilliant. Okay.
That is kind of, points for creativity. Points for
Yeah.
creativity.
Along those lines, there's some Android malware that will
Mhm.
steal your money and then do a factory reset of your phone. Okay. To just wipe out any trace that it was there. Right. So if your phone has been reset to factory, you're probably broke. QNAP, a network attached storage device, is still under attack.
Mhm.
That's like a weekly thing now. The Lazarus APT group is using a fake Windows update to spew malware. And the FBI continues to warn about this. It's using bait of fake job offers, right? So a job offer coming out of the blue from somebody you didn't expect. Maybe something you want to open, but be real careful with that stuff. A Windows vulnerability with new public exploits lets anyone become admin. And lastly, there are vulnerabilities in the UEFI firmware that affects 25 computer manufacturers. So have fun patching, everyone.
Hmm. Yeah, I never leave these chats feeling better about myself or feeling better about the world.
Yeah.
But then we come to the end. And at the end, there's a kicker. And the kicker is where we challenge you to make us smile. Mike,
Oh,
last week I had to take it over because you were failing. Can you do it this week?
well, does Minecraft make you smile?
Yes,
Right.
actually. I like Minecraft. Yeah.
Okay. So big competition, Minecraft competition going on.
Mhm.
And um, some of the players, I guess they were doing really well, got knocked off. And this is a typical gamer thing, right? They got knocked off with a denial of service, right? Unfortunately, there's a little country called Andorra, and the players in Andorra, and the fact that the denial of service attack hit them, took down the entire internet in the country. So I think that's funny. I think that's funny.
Yeah, that's good.
Whoops.
You know what? That's good. That's good.
Okay. All
So
right.
was that
Best I can do.
five people? Six? How many people live in Andorra, Mike?
A handful. I don't know. I've never heard of Andorra before. I got to be honest with you. I've never
Really?
heard of Andorra. But no.
You've never heard of Andorra? You never,
No.
you never did like the trivia or Jeopardy? Like, what are the 3 smallest countries in the world?
No.
Andorra, Liechtenstein, and Vatican City. No.
Okay. I knew Liechtenstein was on the list. Okay.
Well, all right. I'm sure somebody's going to email me and say that there are more small countries that I missed.
And there's more people in Andorra than
And if you want to email me, there's my email address, jake@criticalinsight.com. That's where you're supposed to email me to get the healthcare breach report, the registration for that, or, talk to us for whatever reason, because, at least one of us is entertaining and can make people laugh. All right, Mike.
All right.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye.